lead teacher, and their focus over the past couple of years has been building an MTSS program at high school. And we know, as we've talked to many of you across the state, that you know, K-5, they got that MTSS down pretty well. Middle school, so, but high school, we've been left in the dust. Those of us who've been in high school, so how do we really implement a good MTSS program at the high school level? So Sherry's just going to give us one example of what they've done. We heard another example yesterday from Harnett County, and I'm sure there's many more out there, but that's what this is all about. So Sherry, she was a former math science teacher in the district, has moved to instructional coach, and now has landed with this in her lap. And she's going to share a little bit about what they're doing over in Rockingham County. So Sherry, just to kick it off, if you wouldn't mind giving us just an overview of your program. Tell us, what does your program look like? How have you implemented Apex courses and tutorials?
Thank you, Nicole, and thanks to everybody for joining us today. I'm excited to talk with you about what we've done in Rockingham County. So it was, I think, 4 or 5 years ago now, we decided we were going to start kind of an intervention enrichment time at the high school level with the knowledge that MTSS was coming. I'm going to be honest, we've had a lot of growing pains through that process. Our initial plans, we were trying to just like go back to first period on Mondays and second period on Tuesdays. We had a hard time filling that 30-minute block and understanding what to do with it at the high school level. So that is when we decided to start implementing Apex tutorials. We chose Apex tutorials in the ACT so that we could use that time to work on improving our ACT scores with our students. And basically what happened is we needed what I'm going to call a core instruction for that 30-minute I&E block. We needed something that all kids could be doing so that we could then take time to pull other students that needed those very intensive interventions. So we started with the core during that period, and we chose Apex tutorials. We put teams together from across our district of curriculum to decide which tutorials to pull and use. And we aligned that also with EOCs. So our freshmen work on math tutorials that are aligned with Math 1 curriculum. So that's from the ACT, so it's helping with ACT, but also hopefully helping with Math 1. We chose English and reading for our 10th grade because in North Carolina, English 2 is tested at the 10th grade level. So again, we're hoping to help with ACT, but also with English 2. And then our juniors work on ACT math again, but a little bit higher level than the freshmen. And we picked those modules based on aligning somewhat with Math 3 and aligning with skill gaps that we saw on the mathematics ACT. So that's kind of how we chose our course layout. And our seniors do not work in Apex. They work on soft skills, financial, those kind of resources through Canvas. So we really focused on ACT 11 and under. Seniors, we worked on getting ready for life, kind of. So our first year of implementation with Apex as our core was the year of COVID. And so to add to the growing pains, we added that in, but our school board did vote to make this what we now call it RCS ready, to make RCS ready credits required for graduation. So every student is required to have 2 RCS ready credits by the time they graduate. And that has helped our teachers a lot because we were struggling with like just getting kids to work on this. And so we did associate it with a pass-fail credit. We create rubrics that have to do more with, is the student progressing and working? Then are they, achieving at a certain level? Because we are really focused on growing students, not necessarily getting them all to that highest level. So that's kind of our implementation. Like I said, we've kind of grown with it, adjusted a lot over time, and added in that kind of thing to kind of hone it in. And we're kind of excited to see what happens this year because I feel like this is kind of our first year more normal since COVID. So it'll be the first time where our kids are fully in the classroom, not in masks, that kind of stuff.
Great. Thanks for sharing. Feel free to put any questions you have for Sherry in the chat. So, is there data that you regularly analyze, and share a little bit about that, as you look back at your students and their growth?
So our goal is to compare it to ACT scores and see what's happening with those. Unfortunately, I can't say that we've had a lot of connection. Again, I think the first 2 years of it, kids were at home, COVID, in school, not in school. And then two, they changed that ACT indicator last year. So it's hard when you go from that 17 total to a 19. To see if you're making gains, because we're going to have a year where we're at that 19 and sticking at that 19 to look at the gains. We are able to look at how many students complete the tutorials based on like the pass fail model. And
Mhm.
also our teachers are supposed to do conferencing with students to look and work with them on where they're progressing through the modules. To kind of keep up with the data of how are they working, are they struggling in particular areas. I know we've noted across the district, our teachers are telling us there's one module in particular, it's exponentials in our 9th grade class that across the board our kids are struggling with. So that's something that we kind of look at, but I can't say there's a particular data point at this moment that we've been able to look at, I think, due to the differences in schooling for the past few years.
Sure, sure. And, like when you came across the exponents, how are you addressing that? Because all of your teachers have one of these classes, correct? No matter, and those students are working on probably content that not every teacher is certified to teach. So tell me a little bit about how you address that.
So almost all teachers have one of these classes except for our EOC teachers. So in North Carolina, that's biology, English 2, math 1, math 3. Those teachers spend that time doing interventions and kind of supporting students within their course for support. So we're still honing in the MTSS tier 3 piece this year. We've got a team really working to get tier 3 in place. Previously, we focused more on just intervening in EOCs. For this year, our focus in MTSS is to get those people to actually pull for more intervention focus. But the rest of our teachers do. So when you mentioned they're out of the content, that's very true, because most of our math teachers are actually not in the classroom with these students doing math. And of course, that is difficult for teachers on both ends. There's people that don't love the English reading side, and there's people that don't love the math side. So one thing that we talk about with that is the idea that the tutorials do have those videos. So if a student's struggling, the teacher can sit and kind of go through that with them. You can watch the video too and kind of get yourself on board with that. But the other thing that we try to say is if you have a student that's struggling really bad in a particular area, let's reach out to a math teacher and see if they can help that kid out as almost an intervention for Apex tutorials as well. So if they've taken it and they've done their 3 tries and you're resetting it and we're still struggling, that student probably needs intervention around that material from a math teacher. So let's go ahead and put them in one of these enrichment groups or intervention groups and pull them during that time to work on that concept. Again, because they're so aligned with our content too. Our math 1 students, if they're struggling with one of those concepts, they're probably also struggling with that concept in the math 1 classroom. So that's kind of how we've combated that, is give it your best effort. But if you're really stuck as a teacher, you can send them to the math teacher. I would say most of our staff has gotten on board with the fact that they too can do 9th grade math. So we kind of talk about that, and I'm a former math teacher, so I believe in people that there is no such thing as not being a math person. We're all math people, so we get on board with that.
Awesome. Thank you. You mentioned earlier that you integrate with Canvas. Can you share a little bit with everyone how that's used?
So We do integrate Apex tutorials as well with Canvas for in-classroom use. So if teachers want to use a tutorial in their classroom as a lesson for if they're out at one day, or right now we're working on small group instruction in our secondary classrooms. Our district has done a lot of work around that. And that's also connected to MTSS. So we put that in place because in MTSS, I'm sure many other people are in the same boat as us. We're supposed to be in a triangle like this, and ours is like this. We're completely upside down on the number of students that need intervention. So we're implementing small group instruction as a first step before we even get to interventions as a method of supporting and remediation for students within the classroom. So during that time, our high school teachers are worried about, well, what do I do with the rest of the kids? And Apex tutorials is one of the top things that we recommend. And integrating through Canvas is what makes that great. One, they don't have to go in and search a whole course and try and find just that one piece of the tutorial they want kids to work on. They can pick that ahead of time, post it in Canvas. Kids can work on that tutorial right through Canvas. Gives them access to all of the pieces of it. So looking at that beginning piece where they learn it, then they try it, and then they test it, and then it does grade pass back the test it portion. So we found that to work quite well in our classrooms because we don't want kids on Apex tutorials all day in our traditional classrooms, of course. So this really allows teachers to hone it in and pick a piece. For example, in my classroom, I was teaching systems of equations. I had taught it, my co-teacher had taught it. We had done small groups with it, and they're still just not catching some of it. So I had them get on Apex tutorials just to get another view of it, something other than me saying it, and used that as kind of a intervention model. While I was pulling kids, they could be on Apex tutorials, and I knew that they were getting content that was standard aligned.
And I want to say something too, Sherry, too, which you guys do this too with the data. With Apex tutorials, you are able to see that percent gain. So I'm pretty sure, like you say, in those system of equations, if you put those kids in that and assign them, it's really neat to see that from the beginning to the end. So that's something to consider too with your data, is that percent gain too. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and I did look at it with a teacher yesterday, and one of our RCS Ready teachers. Um, we're really big on pushing it's not all about the number of units you get done, it's about the quality. Because one of my teachers told me yesterday, he said, I get it, they got to do 8 units, but I'm focused on the learning. And he said it so well. And he's a CTE teacher, and he owns that RCS Ready time. And he's like, my kids are going to get their units and they're going to get them well. And he works really hard at that. So I give him, huge props for owning it. But when he went in there, he said, all right, let's look at this kid. We can see that pre-information. And I
Mhm.
said, all right, what I would talk to this kid about is let's make sure they're actually doing the try it and the sections with the videos, because I know they're doing I know they're doing the test it and the post, but we're not seeing a whole lot of gains. So let's make sure that we're actually getting them to do the instruction piece of it and focusing on that. So we do use that data as well. And I just saw there's a question in the chat about how pass fail credit works if students are sent to intervention. That's a really great question. I wish I could say we've had this perfect model set up for that. But again, in the growing pains, what we did is we wrote into our rubric, they have to have done this or an equivalent during intervention time. So basically, if they're getting pulled on a consistent basis for intervention, the teacher that pulls them keeps up with it. And if they're working in there, and then the teacher that's classroom they're in knows, okay, they went to intervention today, and we talked to them about how you have to adjust the rubric because they've done equivalent time. So we did write that in so our teachers would understand if there's a student who's pulled for intervention 50% of the time, then they only had half the amount of time to work in Apex tutorials, which means you're going to have to adjust. They should only have done half the number of modules. They should really focus on that quality of work. when they are in the room. So our rubric kind of allows for that, and it also allows for some teacher discretion, which originally we did not have in there, and our teachers really asked for it. They were like, we want some discretion in this rubric so we can adjust. So 3 points of the rubric is basically the teacher says they were working. And we use that to kind of adjust for that idea.
Okay. Do you all provide, you mentioned that your teachers conference with students, do you provide something for them to use in that conference besides the rubric, or is it just the rubric that they go back and they look at with the student when they conference?
So that's a great question. We've done, originally when we rolled this out, we did trainings on how to use the Apex data. And I mean, now that you mentioned that, we probably need to make sure our new to district people have that training, but we sat down and talked to them about how to look at the data and how to use that data to conference. And we didn't necessarily make a specific conference form for them versus let's look at the data in Apex and have that discussion with students. Like the teacher I talked to yesterday, you know, looking at the fact that their pre and post are very similar. What have you done in the in-between? So we make sure that conferencing is targeted more to what we're seeing within the use of Apex.
Great, thanks. We really appreciate you sharing. Does anyone else have any other questions for Sherry? Feel free to drop it in the chat. If you have something you're doing at your high school or in your district that you want to share, we would love to hear from you as well. Just raise your hand in the chat and we'll happy to let you speak. Now I give my awkward wait time. While you're thinking and brave about sharing, that's a great question. Do you have buy-in from teachers?
That is a great question. Again, it's been a process. So I would say year one, 25%. And I'm going to be honest, our year one rollout was very rocky. This big picture idea did not come from my mind. I can't own it. It was a great big picture idea, but you have to live in the details. And our team that lives in the details really had to work out the kinks for our teachers. I think that was important. So we've grown so much in the process that I would say we have a much larger buy-in now. We're probably closer to that 75-80, where teachers are buying into, I've got to make sure that kids are working on this, and this is why. So it definitely took us time to get there. It's never perfect in the beginning, but the buy-in is growing and we're excited to see that for sure.
Great. Jenny from Yadkin County has a clarifying question. Feel free to come off mute.
Hey, good morning. First of all, Sherry, thank you for sharing so much of your logistical details. So I've got written down what you're doing with every grade and that you're doing the pass fail. And I was writing as hard as I could. And I think I missed, I think you said this, but so forgive me for you having to repeat it. But and I heard you talk about how every teacher is a math teacher. So how do you divide out, like, do they go back to homeroom? I heard you say you used to do like the Monday, and I've lived that too, where Monday they go to first period and do all that. So like, how do you divide out where they go, and do they stay with that teacher? Like, is your plan for them to stay with that teacher for all 4 years, or they rotate and all that? Does that make sense?
Okay, that does make sense. And again, that's something we've had a lot of growing pains through. So I'm excited to share about that. So we started with, they just stayed with their second period teacher, and whoever their second period teacher was their RCS ready teacher. And we followed that model for 3 years now. And this year, with some adjustments that we did make, we've decided that it's much better to be grouped based on grade level, because we had some teachers, for example, our band teacher, he would have students from all 4 grade levels working on 4 different things, having to grade 4 different models. It was so much for them. So I can say without a doubt, the best method I think we've come up with finally this year is clustering based on grade level. So we did add a transition in. It's after our second period. And they have 25 minutes in the course now because of the transition time, but clustering by grade level. This year, we also ended up implementing a little bit of iReady with 9th and 10th. So our students that are significantly below grade level work in iReady. We found that they were struggling a little bit with the Apex because they were so far behind where our Math 1 stuff was. So we've got groups that work in iReady. We've got groups that work in Apex. And we've made that adjustment, but that helped us with grouping by grade level.
Thank you so much for clarifying. That helps me so much. And the last thing I'll ask is, did that make your classes 85 minutes long? I'm trying to think about the master schedule.
So in Rockingham County, we're on a 168, 172 now day calendar. So we already go like, I think 10 to 15 minutes longer than we originally did. But yeah, our classes, some of them are like 88 minutes, I want to say, but they're in that range. I think it's 8:30 to 9:55 is first block. So most of all of our high schools pretty much have the same schedule. But yeah, we did shorten the classes a little bit. And I know Jody Chester's from my district, she's on and she was putting in the chat. A lot of our teachers are excited that we're going to have that specific time to pull for remediation. And not just remediation, but also hopefully this year we'll actually get to work towards intervention. And it's not all of our math teachers pull intervention groups, but by the time you pull Math 1 and a Math 3 teacher, most of our high schools only have 5 math teachers. That's at least 3 of our 5 that are pulling. So what we do is when we do the schedule by grade level, we choose who's going to have 9th, who's going to have 10th, 11th, 12th, and we basically take the school and divide them by those groups, leaving our EOC teachers aside to do intervention and remediation.
Thanks. You've already, just to clarify, yesterday we saw, those of you that heard us yesterday, in Harnett County, they use our exact path similar to how you use iReady, because their kids have seen iReady for so long. They use exact path in the 9th grade to take their diagnostic and to do that lower level remediation on a personalized learning path. And then they use other things to help with ACT and SAT prep and EOCs. So, but I think you've hinted at this. Is there anything else that you would do differently? You've already told us one thing that you kind of switched up, but is there anything else that you would do differently?
That's such a great question. It's hard to think back to the beginning now because I've lived through so many transitions, particularly with COVID.
Sure.
So I love this exact path idea. I think that's awesome. So I'm glad that you guys brought that up, because that would help. And our Apex is great for ACT. I would definitely cluster by grade level and just keep the transition in there. And I know that's the one I've already gone over. And then the rubrics, making sure that teachers are in on helping to write those to help with buy-in, and making sure that they understand. They still struggle a little bit with the idea of pass fail. The other thing is, in our county, we work on semester. So this is a year-long half credit course, and we live in the semester world. And that is a complete mind shift for everybody. So we did decide this year, we actually schedule them, now that we added the transition, with the same teacher all year. I know Jenny had asked, do we keep them with that person all year? I don't know. That's something that we'll have to look at next year, because keeping with the same teacher for 4 years might be a good idea. But this year we did say we're going to schedule them with one teacher all year, and that'll really help with the whole idea of grading pass fail and what goes into that.
Good. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Sherry, this is Jamie Quinn. I was just sitting there thinking, I'm always so, from being a principal and the other things that I've done, I'm always so concerned about like buy-in from teachers as well as students. But first of all, I applaud what you're doing. But secondly, I think when you start laying that data on the table, after you start looking at this and comparing it to your ACT outcomes, I think that you'll have that other 15 or 20% bought in too. And it's really great model how you're getting really specific on the outcomes that you're after. It's really neat. Just wanted to throw some props at you.
Thank you. We have a team of people in our district. We're a very small district. We don't have a huge curriculum team. My title is very different than what I do sometimes, and that's because it takes all of us, and definitely a full team effort for all of our high school instructional coaches and our secondary lead. So thank you. But we've worked hard, and we're happy to share so that other people don't go through as many growing pains as we have.
We appreciate that. Well, thank you everyone for joining us and sticking with us the entire time. Sherry, you've given us some great nuggets of information for us I can see people feverishly writing notes, and I'm sure your phone may blow up at some point in time, but we love the sharing of ideas. If anyone else has anything they would like to share, we would love to open that up. And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to share my screen again, because we would love for you to join us at our next events. We have Friday, we have at noon. We will be, this is mainly elementary focused, if you want to join us Friday at noon. And then we have some conference presentations coming up in South Carolina and in North Carolina next week. So in South Carolina, we're at the South Carolina Ed Tech Conference, and you can catch us on the 27th. And I think Emily's going to be presenting Exact Path there. And then the AIM conference, for those of you in North Carolina, we would love for you to come by, visit us at the AIM conference. We also are doing some, you'll send us an email if you want to come, but Jamie and I would love to have you at our dinner either on Wednesday night or Thursday night. Wednesday's more of a pop-in right next door at Jimmy B's. So we would love to see you guys there. So feel free to, you may get an invite from us, and we would love to see you. Then, and unfortunately, our presentation on AIM is not until Saturday. So I hope you stick around and come see us. We will be talking about hearing from Durham County and their MTSS framework. And so you can see we've kind of covered several different districts this week. And then we're at NC Papa, and we have two different presentations at NC Papa, both on Thursday, the 17th. And if you're going to NC Papa, we would love to meet up with you there. Come stop in and see us either at presentations or at the booth. Edmentum team, anybody have anything else? Did I miss anything?
So if everyone could come off of, or come on video, so I can take a quick picture, because I would like to post a tweet on Twitter. So
all
if
right,
you would do that,
and I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you so much.
Hang on just a minute, Sabrina. I need to comb my hair. Okay.
Of course,
Okay.
he's always got to
Okay,
fix his hair.
This is my best side.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much to all these great educators. I really appreciate it. Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your week. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.